Okay. Okay, so welcome to fellow Cabinet members, councillors, members of the public to this Cabinet meeting at City Hall. As usual, the agenda, papers and public forum submissions are available on our website. I will draw your attention also to the emergency evacuation procedures, which are outlined on the agenda and currently being displayed on the screen. There you go. Just a reminder that the meeting is webcast, so I need to remind everyone to speak into the microphone to ensure you are being heard when you're making your contribution. Just in relation to the agenda, items 8, establishing the City Leap Energy Partnership, contains an exempt appendix which has commercially sensitive information, and any discussion on the content of this element will need to be held in exempt session. So Cabinet members, you've been given access to these appendices. And further in relation to agenda item 8, establishing the City Leap Energy Partnership, the decision needs to be actioned immediately, as the delay would risk the partnership. Therefore, the monitoring officer and the chief exec, in consultation with the deputy mayor, have agreed that given the circumstances, it would be reasonable that this decision is not subject to call-in to avoid any delay. Regarding agenda items 18, 19 and 20, to enable Councillor Cheney to leave promptly for a family matter, these items are being brought forward in the agenda, so they'll now be taken after agenda item 10, which is also his paper. So thanks for your understanding of the change of the sequence of our agenda items. So on to agenda item 2 now. There's a reminder that, as usual, statements and questions will be taken at the time the relevant agenda item is discussed, and I will reply to questions or ask the relevant Cabinet member to respond at the time. Agenda item 3, apologies for absence. We've had no apologies, but I believe Tom is on his way. Now, oh, there he is. Okay, so we're all here. Helen's on her way, yes, it's coming down from Redcliffe. Okay, agenda item, but Tom, you're going to have to leave early, yeah, so just make a note of that, and Craig, obviously, we've got an indication that you'll be leaving early as well. Okay, agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Anyone have to declare an interest in relation to today's agenda? No. Okay, agenda item 5, matters referred for consideration by scrutiny or full council. There have been no referrals for this meeting. So on to agenda item 6, reports from scrutiny commissions. There has been one report submitted from scrutiny commission, so I'm going to hand over to Councillor Tony Dyer. So Tony, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Osm referred to Cabinet as regarding the setting up the City Leap Energy Partnership. I would say that Osm members approached this with a mixture of cautious excitement and concerned trepidation, particularly given the extent of what's been proposed. Osm members are broadly supportive of the proposals in relation to City Leap and recognise the potential benefits to the city and its residents in delivering decarbonisation. However, in view of the carbon complexity of the scheme and the associated investment, they ask that Cabinet take a series of points into consideration as plans progress. We've listed 13 points in the document. I'm not going to go through them all in the interest of time. And some of those points were responded to by officers in the meeting itself. I will pick out a few which is regarding adequate safeguards for future energy customers to protect them against issues with supply costs and infrastructure, political accountability as we move to a different form of governance, information about the job opportunities arising, and also further information about the plans to enable all residents to access the affordable energy opportunities that are coming forward. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Tony. And we will come back to you on all those points. I was just talking to Stephen there on all those points, and it will strengthen the thinking and the planning around it. So really appreciate your work. Okay, so let's move on to agenda item 7 now, Chair's business. And I'm going to work through three interrelated issues today, and they roll on to one rolls on to the other. First off is obviously the Clean Air Zone went live last Monday. So as an authority, we've met our legal, moral, and our environmental obligations. The early feedback suggests that 79% of vehicles entering the zone were compliant and were not charged. But we are going to emphasise again just how important it is to recognise the purpose of CAS, which is about improving air quality through cleaner vehicles and behaviour change, encouraging people to take more active travel options, including public transport. It is a public health intervention, not a transport intervention in light of its relationship to clean air. And I just thought it worth reminding ourselves about the journey to CAS. It did not just drop out of the air. It wasn't thought up in a back room in the council. Our air standards across the UK did not reach EU standards. Client Earth legally challenged the government over their lack of action. The government then rolled down responsibility to local government across the major cities with a legal requirement to have compliant air in the shortest possible time. We then entered a period of negotiation with government, repeatedly making the points that clean air zones are blunt instruments and could have negative consequences for some people, for households and businesses, and actually our public sector partners, such as the hospital, who could be impacted. During this time, DEFRA Minister Teresa Coffey, who I had a number of conversations with, campaign groups and opposition parties, I felt kind of disregarded the caution we were urging around CAS. It is a good thing to clean up air, but recognising that some people could be negatively impacted by it didn't seem to be a priority for those groups. We ended up going for a CAS D rather than a CAS C, so that it impacted on a centralised area of the city rather than being spread much more widely across the city, including St Philip's Marsh, for example. And in that time, we also negotiated a £42 million support package to support households and businesses with the transition, bearing in mind the importance of a need for a just transition. And then we announced the CAS and worked with the city to prepare for its launch. You know, and I will just say, clearly, now it has been launched, there are some concerns being raised by some quarters. I mean, I would say two things. The debate about the nature of CAS was 3 years ago, really, and you know, many of those arguments were made by us then, and it would be great to have had some support then. But I would also say, for those groups that so vociferously advocated for CAS in the first instance, it'd be good to stay in a public debate about this. Some groups have been quite absent as the conversation has gone on. So this is an example of where we can have an ongoing city discussion you know, about this. So it would be good to see some of those groups still in that discussion. I have been asked about the future of CAS, by the way, interestingly recently, and asked if there's going to be expansion. The answer from me is certainly no. I'm not going to expand the CAS to the whole city. As soon as it does deliver compliant air in the shortest possible time, there's a possible that it won't be needed anymore at all. But whatever future there is with the CAS or with any other measures to manage vehicle and people movement around the city, that would be up to any future commission. But on to my second point about onto buses, which is really important because, again, one of the purposes of CAS is to change the way people move around the city. And we do need people to be moving onto public transport as part of their mix. That's clearly essential, has been brought up. We need a quality bus service to make that possible. And the truth of it is that the service we're getting at the moment in Bristol and beyond is simply not good enough. And unfortunately, seems to show no sign of getting any better. It does seem to be clear that the crisis on our buses at this time is not going away. Now, we know that austerity and deregulation has led to critical underfunding of our bus transport system. There is a national element to this, has been raised through the LGA, and we've raised it with core cities as well. The pandemic financial support given to save the bus operators, which is a point I made at the time, should not have been given out without the government asking for a share of ownership of those companies. We shouldn't have given out free financial support, and that could have been a pathway taking us back towards more public ownership, which I believe is the best model of ownership for a public good like transport. But that ship has sailed. The next best thing we can do is to plot a route at our level to an alternative model of bus management. And one of those options will be franchising. Now, responsibility for buses is now with the Combined Authority. So we do need the West of England Mayor to meet with myself, with First Bus and other local authority leaders, so we can work together to clearly set out the standard of bus services we need. We need to set out the various alternative models available to us and the routes to actually realising them, including the financial resource needed to make them work and how we're going to put the financial support package together. This is now, it has been issue critical for some time, but certainly it is an issue of critical importance to the people in Bristol and to the Greater Bristol region. And this brings me on to my final point on mass transit. We've needed a chapter change in public movement, public transport for decades in Bristol. The city historically has failed to deliver that. But until we get a mass transit system in place, we will always be in a precarious system. We have done the structural and the economic studies to underpin the delivery of a mass transit system for the Greater Bristol region, including an underground and segregated overground routes. This is the only way we're going to transform the way people move around the city. And with these studies done, it's extremely concerning that the last full council, all the opposition parties expressed opposition to a low-carbon mass transit system. And I'm concerned that the public consultation on mass transit that was due to go out last January, followed by 2 further missed dates, is still not out. Now, my administration has done all we can and all we needed to do to put the foundations in place. What we need now is for the Metro Mayor to get the consultation out there. We need a commitment to the investment of the next tranche of money, and we need to drive the next phase forward. And we need Bristol's politicians, the opposition politicians, to stop talking the city down, to stop being a drag on the scale of infrastructure development we need, and to be more ambitious for our city. Mass transit, I believe, is going to be one of the first tests of the committee system's ability to deliver against the scale of challenge and opportunity that's in front of us. And we simply cannot let Bristolians down again on another failed transport solution. So let's move on to agenda item 8 now, establishing the City Leap Energy Partnership. And Kai, I'm going to come over to you to introduce this report with a reminder that this item has been deemed exempt from call-in so as to not delay the formation, the formal establishment of this partnership. Kai.
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to place on record my thanks to David White and the Energy Service and all the officers that have worked on this project. It's been a long road, 4 years, a very complicated piece of work. And also, I need to place on record my thanks to my Cabinet colleagues that have worked on this, especially Craig and Nicola, and of course to yourself, Marvin, for backing this idea and proposal from the start. Now, if we go to the origins of this project, what we've clearly identified in the city is the scale of the problem that we're facing in terms of what we need to do to decarbonise the city. Now, we think it's about at least £5 billion, the scale of the challenge to decarbonise the energy system of the city. The historic pace of delivery that we've been doing over the last 5 years has been pretty good. It's probably the best in the country, is that we've invested about £100 million in the decarbonisation and energy efficiency of our energy system in the city. So what was clear is that we need a step change and a change in scale to match the problem that we face. The question is, where do we get the money from? We don't have the money as the council. The government isn't stepping up to the scale of the challenge. So that's the question that we asked ourselves. So we thought 4 years ago, why don't we see if we can get some investment from alternative means from the private sector? So we produced this, a prospectus, City Leap prospectus, and we basically outlined about £1 billion worth of investable energy opportunities to decarbonise the energy system of the city. We had some support from the Department of International Trade, and that document went out around the world in May 2018. We had a closing date of August 2018. We pretty much said, if you're interested in coming into Bristol to partner with us, let us know by this date. So we didn't know if it would attract any interest or the interest would be massive. By the close of play, we had over 180 expressions of interest from around the world, from organisations in Asia, Europe, the UK, North America, organisations that want to partner with the city to help us decarbonise the city going forward. So we're overwhelmed with that. And after taking on board the feedback from the interested parties and our own deliberations, we decided the best way to take this forward would be to set up a joint venture company to jointly, with a partner, with a strategic partner, deliver the investment to that larger scale that we were talking about before. So we opened that up. We had a long list, then we had a short list, then we had 3 final bidders, and then the winning bidder, which we reported on in April, was a North American green energy company called Ameresco, who've been around for about 30 years. And they've done major projects on decarbonisation in Chicago, New York, and other US cities, and Vattenfall, the Swedish state energy company, as their essential subcontractor, who specialise in heat networks. Now, they've come in as a subcontractor to specialise in that area of decarbonisation alone. What we went out to procurement for was a 20-year partnership where the joint venture company would be owned on a 50-50 basis. And as part of its winning bid, Ameresco promised to deliver 140,000 tonnes of carbon, 180 megawatts of zero carbon generation assets contributing to net zero carbon by 2030, 326 gigawatt hours of zero carbon energy generated, £22 million of energy efficiency measures deployed. And to deliver the above, Ameresco estimated that City Leap would need to invest at least £424 million. So I said at least £424 million in the next 5 years in energy infrastructure such as solar, wind, heat networks, heat pumps, and energy efficiency measures. Since we reported on Ameresco being the preferred bidder, they've updated their business plans and assumptions. And as you can see from the attached summarised business plan, that original £424 million is now an assumption of £630 million investment over the next 5 years. So a real increase on the level that we were working to over the previous 5 years. In terms of social value, it's estimated that £61.5 million of social value, including 50 million of contracts delivered by local supply chain, £1.5 million community energy development fund, and a guaranteed £500,000 innovation fund over the first 5 years. The development of a community benefit fund expected to reach £2.8 million during the concession period, £2.34 million of a guaranteed concession payment. Also, an interest in innovation is an estimated £6 million raised through a crowdfunding mechanism. So citizens of Bristol will be able to invest in many of the projects. 410 new jobs created, and 1,000 in total, if you include the supply chain and jobs created as a whole as part of this. In terms of community energy, there's a firm commitment to collaborate with community energy stakeholders throughout Bristol. Community funding to support feasibility and innovation and delivery of grassroots energy projects. Community-led input into future projects through a community forum and heat network advisory panel. crowdfunding platform to be launched to support funding of local projects, free at the point of use to community groups as well. In terms of the wider benefits to residents and to the citizens of Bristol, I mean, we've seen recently how volatile the reliance on oil and gas is with energy price fluctuations. Now, if we move to a more decarbonised, renewable system of energy production, the predictability and security of those supplies are much stronger. So citizens will be able to rely on more robust and long-term pricing. In terms of protections that residents and customers can expect, in terms of heat network customers, the partnership, Vattenfall, one of our partners, have agreed to contractually sign up to the heat trust standards on how customers should be treated until national regulation is introduced. And of course, as part of the wider benefits to our residents and tenants is the focus on demand reduction and energy efficiency, which is really important in terms of reducing the requirement on the energy systems. So in conclusion, this is a groundbreaking approach to scale up investment into energy decarbonisation. This is possibly a blueprint for other cities in the UK and Europe, possibly even further afield than that. And we've already seen this approach being adopted, or the thinking behind it being adopted by the Core Cities Group and Free CI, where we've identified as a country £230 billion of investable energy opportunities as a country going forward. So this project will deliver decarbonisation, deliver jobs, skills and training, and the wider benefits to residents as I've outlined. So finally, I'd like to thank all the staff that have worked on this, and I commend this paper to Cabinet.
Thanks very much, Kai, and Nicola as well, and all the other Cabinet members that have contributed to this on this journey, and obviously huge thanks to our staff as well, the team that have done all the hard yards, to make this a reality, and just as a congratulations to them in particular. This is a world example. As you talked about core cities and 3CI, I was at COP obviously just a few weeks ago when people were talking about this at COP from other UK cities and mayors from around the world as well. So it's quite incredible to be in this position. No one cares whether we're first or whatever. That's not the point. The point is about finding new ways of mobilising the scale of finance that's going to be needed if we're going to succeed in decarbonisation. It's one of the worst statements in the world, isn't it, when someone says all it takes is political will. So naive. It takes political will and billions of pounds to make this stuff real, and that's what's happened here. So huge congratulations to the team for this innovation. So let's move on. We've received 4 statements on this report. The first statement we have is from Ian Watkins. So Ian, can I ask you to speak to your statement? You have 1 minute, and I'll put the timer on. I'll give you an indication when you're near the end. Not here? Okay. So no, Ian. So we have Councillor Fodor. Martin, I'll just give you a little nod when you've got 10 seconds left, okay?
Thanks very much. Obviously, I welcome the commitment to decarbonise the city. It's a really important step, and I recognise the immense effort the officers have put into this. It's been quite a painful process over 4.5 years, and they've done brilliantly. I've always pressed for a serious commitment to social value, so I welcome the fact that's in there, and to local skills and jobs and the supply chains, and we need to do a lot more work in the region to nurture that. I've also pressed from the very earliest discussions about this for the innovatory and vital role of community-led energy initiatives, and I'd like to know that the community will be leading the proposals, not simply a subcontractor or a sort of minor player, because they've created
10 seconds.
Thank you. There's a dilemma between how shallow and how deep the retrofitting is. We need to discuss that. I'm concerned the waste heat will be dependent on incineration that undermines the circular economy. Okay. And finally, the move of our team, our skilled staff to the private sector is something we'll have to be really careful to see that that works well, because we'll be losing their contribution.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to keep, so we've got quite a few papers today. Okay, so the next statement is from Councillor Denyer.
Thank you. This is a very important step in Bristol's decarbonisation journey, and I'm really pleased to see it happen. Well done to everyone involved. This, as we've just heard, will lead to some hundreds of millions of pounds of investment, with the potential of that increasing to £1 billion in the longer term, which is great. However, estimates are that we'll need at least 10 times that amount in order for Bristol to reach carbon neutrality. I've made some specific comments in my written statement about upskilling of the local supply chain, leveraging council influence across the city, and retrofitting council homes, which I trust you've read, so I won't go into detail here. Finally, I have a healthy scepticism about public-private partnerships. I think that history has shown that putting essential public infrastructure into private or semi-private hands can often have undesirable outcomes. So in an ideal world, I'd have liked to have seen
Just
more...
10 seconds.
Sure, more local and national government investment directly. However, I recognise the extremely difficult situation that the Conservative government has created for us here.
Thank you.
So I welcome this. It's not the whole story. It's necessary but not sufficient, but it's a great step. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Okay, next statement is, thank you very much for that, Councillor Lisa Stone. No, okay, thank you. Okay, so let's turn to questions now. That's the end of statements. We have 4 public forum questions in total. The first 2 are from Susan Audrey, and you get a question, and then you get 1 supplementary per question. Yeah. Okay, so can we take the microphone to Susan Audrey, please? Not here? Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's go to our next questioner is Councillor Fodor.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, the first question asks if the cost, the difference between the cost of capital for this joint venture compared to if it was raised through public sources.
Shall I come in? Yeah, thanks for your question, Martin. I'll read the answer out. The cost of capital for retrofit, cost of capital for retrofit and other energy projects carried out on the council's estate currently depends on the source of the capital. It can be provided from a number of sources, including a variety of government grants, the council's capital and maintenance budgets, and the Public Works Loan Board, borrowing in relation to which the council must, of course, pay interest. It's anticipated that funding for City Leap projects could come from a number of sources, including grant funding, the council's capital budget, e.g. the maintenance of social housing, and borrowing from private sector sources. The costs of the latter will be for the strategic partner to negotiate, depending on the source and the project in question. The strategic partner will need to demonstrate a positive business case, e.g. financial and or decarbonisation, for all projects, irrespective of the source of capital, in order to meet the project acceptance criteria for council approval of projects. Do you have anything else on that?
Supplementary, Martin?
Yeah, in terms of supplementary on that one, if the work is being delivered through the joint venture partner and they are accruing profit from any of the investment, will that affect access to public funding?
I think the answer it's on a project by project basis. Each project's going to be different. There's going to be projects that the council will probably invest in. There's going to be projects that are solely projects that the strategic partner will invest in. So it's difficult to give a broad answer to that. I don't know if Craig wants to come.
Well, only to say that under sort of updated guidance, the council can't borrow for yield. So in theory, if there were to be profit to be made, then the council wouldn't be able to borrow toward that. It could potentially impact the whole capital programme. So we'd have to be very careful about how that would happen, and make sure that there's a very clear distinction between yield and social value, for example.
Did you want to come on your second question, Martin?
Thanks very much. The second question is about the community-led initiatives and the importance of social value in all of this. How soon do we expect to see those initiated and delivering as described in the business plan?
Thanks, Martin. City Leap intends to initiate its social value commitments as quickly as possible, many of which are already in progress. These commitments will be regularly reported on and tracked through the social value portal. City Leap will provide regular updates on the development of other social value commitments. Bristol City Leap will continue to actively engage with community groups to realise inclusive decarbonisation plans for Bristol. It's expected that the proposed Community Energy Development Fund will be launched in early 2023.
You have a supplementary, Martin?
Yeah, thank you. In terms of the community-led initiatives, I'm concerned that the community is actually in charge where possible. Can you say who would select the community partners, and will they be allowed to prioritise and initiate projects to show their whole range of contributions, not just as a subcontractor, as I said?
So the beauty of this is obviously we're a 50-50 shareholder in the joint venture. So, I mean, we'll have a say in how that's rolled out. And in terms of the process to date, we have been engaging with all the expected community groups that you can imagine in Bristol Green Capital Partnership, Bristol Energy Co-op. So we've been engaging with who you would expect us to engage with, and we'd expect that to continue going forward. I mean, if there's ever a problem with that, then I'll of course be interested to know that. But the expectation is that we'll engage with all those groups because they're an important part of the delivery of this.
Okay. Any cabinet members like to comment on this one? No? Nicola?
Yeah, I will if I can. So, I've been on this journey with Kai and Nicola at various stages. This is an absolutely huge moment, and it's a really exciting moment for Bristol. We're about to deliver definitely 600 million, potentially £1 billion worth of energy infrastructure into the city to decarbonise it, with a potential, requirement of between 5 and 10 billion pounds. So it's not the solution, but it's a massive step toward it. And we are probably one of the few, or potentially the only city in the world that's doing it at this moment in time, and people are watching this everywhere. So I'm really excited and proud that we've got to where we are with this. It's been a rough journey. It's been difficult at times, and I just want to pay tribute to the officers who've worked so hard on this, and not just David White and his team, although a huge thanks to them, but also the legal teams, the finance teams, and everyone else in the background that have worked at times all weekend, all through the night, and so on to get us to where we are today. So huge moment for Bristol, and it's really exciting.
Thanks, Craig. Nicola, and then Asha.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. Yeah, it is. It's a big day, and it's a big piece of news, and I think. But it also comes off the back of a kind of overall approach to energy that this council has maintained for the whole time that, thinking about the energy service as it is now. And so we've always had pretty progressive energy policies in the planning space. And, they do sometimes butt heads when we're looking at kind of growth and how to actually grow the city responsibly. And so it's been brilliant in recent months to be able to talk to the development sector and Gorham Homes and other kind of interested entities about that line of sight through to actual delivery, and a real stepping up of it, that yes, we do expect you to connect to the heat network, and yes, this is how you're going to do it. And things like the Castle Park Energy Centre, really putting the proofs in the pudding. Like, here you are, if you've got a site in Old Market, you're going to be connecting to this 3 megawatt piece of kit here that we've just launched. And so it's super positive. I think Martin, obviously you and I both have a shared respect, ambition, around community energy in particular, and some of those individuals that represent those amazing organisations. That again comes off the back of many, many years of cultured support for that kind of infrastructure in the city. We're like the envy of, I can't tell you how many times other parts of LGA Labour have come to us to talk to us about how to launch community energy across the country. It's something I say every time we talk about this subject, but I think it gets taken for granted at times, not by people in this room, might I add. And a good example, a scenario that you talked about then, is to think about the Bottle Yard. So there was an opportunity there at Bottle Yard for our own energy service to put PV on that roof, but we knew that the energy co-op could deliver more faster. And so we made that decision politically amongst the cabinet to sort of hand that opportunity to the Energy Co-op and look what they've achieved, the largest solar array in the country. And so I think, you know, it's that culture will not change with this move. You know, it's about which levers do we pull when and how do we get the best outcomes. And so I see a massive role for community energy in this partnership. And so it's really, really positive, and it's a big day. And I can't wait till tomorrow when I can talk to the development sector in a slightly different way as it's full steam ahead.
Asha.
I really just wanted to say I don't want us to underestimate how historic what we are about to agree is. In my conversations with city mayors in European cities, all eyes are on Bristol. People are looking at us, as you said, the core cities, but also in Europe, looking at a way in which that they can reach net zero by 2030. So again, I just want to commend all of the staff. I want to commend Kai, Nicola, and of course yourself for delivering. You know, we walk our talk here in this city, and I'm delighted because it's been long in the making, and I never thought we would get it over the line, but we finally did. So thank you to everyone.
Thanks, Asha. And everyone's made some very powerful points. I'll hand back to you in a moment, Kai, to take the decision, which I will support, by the way. But just something about context to this as well, because when we talk about public money, first off, on the point of local supply chain, that has been at the heart of what we've been about from the beginning. We have, and I would dare say, we were quite loudest in making that a point very early on when we're thinking about Bristol's transition to make sure this is a just transition. The danger is that those people who are most precariously balanced are the most vulnerable to being negatively impacted by the economic restructuring we need to go through to decarbonise the economy. That's our people. And so from the very beginning, talking about the local supply chain, skills transitions has been at the heart, of our approach, whether we're talking about whatever we're talking about with the decarbonisation. One of the points I made with government last week, though, which is something people rarely take into account, is that 12 years of austerity doesn't just mean pressure on frontline services, it means backroom capacity. And when your backroom capacity is hollowed out, the ability to stay on the front foot in playing that catalytic local leadership role we'd like to play, such as building some of those wider non-statutory interventions that ensure an inclusive economic transition, are undermined. Now, we will do it because that's at the heart of what we want to do. But it's just to recognise the scale of the challenge that is upon us in delivering inclusive economic transition because of the funding situation that we've been put on by, our national government. Secondly, on the point of public money, we agree, but there is a reality check here. I've just come back from COP. There is no national plan to decarbonise the UK's economy. It's non-existent. I made this point to the Treasury Minister when I was on a board with C40. I'm sat next to someone from the Treasury, and they don't have a plan. And if you don't have a plan, you can't attach finance to it. And if they haven't attached finance to it, there is no government finance for us to grab a hold of to roll out a plan at the scale and pace it needs to be rolled out. So in many ways, this is about us doing the work in the absence of our national government's leadership. And I would extend that actually to say that one of the constant challenges we were making at COP, whether we be at UN General Assembly in September, was that national governments are failing as a collective, and if they're not failing as individual collectives, the global system through which they interact is failing to produce the scale and pace of change we need to deliver. And what's happening now is increasingly the world is looking to the global network of cities to move, and that's why this model is so important at this time. If cities are going to move and we're going to decarbonise the world's cities, which now house more than half the world's population, we need to find ways of getting finance into the hands of cities. That's philanthropic, it's public finance when we can get it to make markets and de-risk markets, because it was a massive political risk for us, City Leap, because I think there were some people who perhaps maybe would have liked the opportunity to have picked it apart. And it also means getting private finance, because the money is not there if we just wait for government. And again, it's why it's so important in the face of the failure of our existing global systems. But let me hand over to you now, Kai, to take the decision which I support, and I'm sure all the councillors in the chamber will welcome.
Thanks, Marvin. I was going to come back on it, but you covered those points really well. I mean, the fact that we're doing this in the first place is because the government investment isn't there. So the point about, we'd all like more public investment in this, but the fact is, there was a climate emergency declared, wasn't there? So we have to try and get the money in as quickly as possible to deal with this problem. And then obviously the challenge after we get the money in is the workforce issue and the skills base. And this is a massive white collar and blue collar opportunity. So it's really important that we crack that. The problem is in this country, further education is all market driven. And we're not in front of that at the moment. But the Welsh Government have done a good job on it. So it is possible to do it. But I'll move on because I've spoken a lot. So in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the decisions as set out in the report. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kai. So let's move on to agenda item 9 now, additional resource for fire safety. This is with you, Tom.
Thank you, Mayor. Fire safety remains an area of huge importance for Bristol City Council, and we've been investing over £2.5 million a year in fire safety measures across council properties in recent times. This investment and the council's commitment to reviewing fire safety measures regularly are aimed at ensuring buildings operate in such a way as to contain fires and allow the maximum opportunity for emergency services to respond. The recent tragic cases of flat fire at Twinnell House and suspected arson at Eccleston House are a sobering reminder that incidents do occur, and that having secure fire safety measures in place is important to protect whole buildings and prioritise the safety of residents in the event of an emergency. The issue of fire safety has been especially high profile since Grenfell, and we carried out numerous checks and reviews of our blocks back then to be sure they didn't have the same cladding and were safe. We've made sure to install fire breaks, improve compartmentation and replace fire doors in many locations. These improvements have helped on the occasions that they've been needed to prevent the spread of a fire from one flat to another, and we saw that in action at Twinnell House in September. In October, we also authorised up to £1 million to carry out updated assessments under the framework known as PAS 9980. PAS 9980 gives recommendations and guidance on undertaking a fire risk appraisal of the external wall construction and cladding of existing multi-storey blocks of flats. A fire risk appraisal of external wall construction and cladding is described in this PAS as a fire risk appraisal of external walls, an FRAEW, and the purpose of this is to assess the risk to occupants from a fire spreading over or within the external walls of the building and decide whether, in the specific circumstances of that building, remediation or other mitigating measures to address the risks are considered necessary. We must constantly remain vigilant about fire safety. Research, testing and regulations change, and when new information becomes available regarding fire safety in blocks that has developed, and so it's important that we continue to update our approach. These changes, as well as the new PAS 9980 standard of inspections we've been conducting, gave us information on 4 blocks in Barton Hill in May this year, and 4 more in October, which meant we'd already introduced a waking watch in 8 blocks. And following engagement with Avon Fire and Rescue Service after the fire at Eccleston House, we concluded that the EPS expanded polystyrene cladding contributed to the spread of the fire, and at that point took the decision to roll out waking watches to a further 27 blocks to ensure that we're taking all the steps we can to keep people safe. And this is a decision that has the support of the fire service, and which national government have also said they agree is proportionate. I also need to just note to Cabinet that following an urgent key decision that was taken on the 22nd of November 2022, and in accordance with the requirements of the finance scheme and delegations, an emergency waking watch was put in place at relevant blocks at a cost of up to £2 million until the 20th of January 2023. The introduction of a waking watch as interim measures will help ensure the safety of residents remains paramount and secure. The Council must commission this service as a precautionary measure to protect the health and welfare of our residents of high-rise blocks where EPS is present. It will remain in place at each block until suitable alternative measures are implemented or those issues have been remediated. And therefore this report also seeks authority to procure and award contracts for the implementation of fire alarms in the tower blocks, which will then negate the need for a waking watch provision. As seen in the report, this represents a significant investment of over £24 million for waking watches and fire alarms. The costs of these additional fire safety measures will be captured within our Housing Revenue Account business plan, which is currently under review, and we will be making further announcements in January regarding the approach to sprinklers and the pace at which the cladding replacement can realistically be achieved. I commend this report to Cabinet.
Thanks very much, Tom. Really appreciate your work on this. So we'll come to comments in a minute, but we've had no public forum statements on this, but we had 5 questions. The first 2 questions are from Councillor Hopkins, who I think I'd know if he was here. He's not here. Oh, he is here. Oh, there we go. My view of you is obscured. My sincere apologies. Okay, would you like to ask your first question, Councillor Hopkins?
Yeah, first question. Can we have the cost of making a block safe by means of alarms and sprinklers that have previously been planned? Obviously, it's going to be more for some blocks than others, but can we have a written statement on that?
Yes, we can provide that information once it's available on a block-by-block basis. As you point out, the costs are going to vary depending on the size and the archetype of the block, as well as what we get back through competitive tendering processes. So a block-by-block basis will provide that as part of the HIP in January.
Yeah, thanks for that. Clearly, Waking Watch or something, wardens are necessary in the short term, but it's not a long-term solution. And in terms of phasing this, because it was planned that a number of these alarms and sprinklers would be installed already, and they haven't been. And it's essential, obviously, that work on that moves quickly, because if that happens quickly, we need to spend a lot less on wardens. So can we have the programme for this and assurance that it will stick to time this time?
So the programme will be part of the Housing Investment Plan in January 2023 and go through the budget papers process. That's where that information will be available. I think it's just worth bearing in mind that sprinklers don't necessarily negate the need for Waking Watch. One of the blocks with a Waking Watch in it at the moment does have a sprinkler system, but we'll provide that information in January as part of the HIP.
Sorry, so I'm just keeping track, Gary, so we know. That's the first question and a supplementary.
Yep.
Are you on your second question now?
Second question.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have the clear programme with dates? And can I not give an answer to this in the near future rather than in long term?
In January, as part of the HIP, we'll provide that information. That'll be when it's all made available as part of the programme that we publish.
Right. Supplementary then. The cost per warden is obviously expensive, very expensive. We have a lot of tenants who are well motivated to try and keep their blocks safe. I'm sure quite a lot of them are more than capable of being trained with the right sort of backup to provide this safety service, and it could come at significantly lower cost, I would believe, than what's in this report. Will that be borne in mind when we're looking at how we keep the block safe?
So from April 2023 for that period, for that financial year, we'll be exploring what options we can make to reduce the costs and look at local businesses that could provide this service. That will be something we will explore and are already exploring, yes.
We had a meeting on that very point, Gary. So I won't open up the conversation again now, but I will say we'd be more than willing to talk to you, outside this meeting, about that. Okay. So it's a fair point, well made. Okay. Don't think our next questioner is here. So next question who's present is from Councillor Tim Rippington. Tim.
Thanks, Marvin. I've had a reply already, written reply. Thanks for that. It's very comprehensive. I still have a few concerns regarding communication between residents and the Waking Watch, but I'll raise those with you outside this forum. But thanks for that. This is my supplementary. This has become an expensive issue for us as we've taken urgent action, obviously, to try and ensure our residents are safe. But this is a national issue because this cladding is used everywhere. Have we had any contact from national government regarding help with this, or any indication of what they intend to do to tackle this problem across the country?
So we have been in touch with the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities on this issue, and I've met with them directly to raise our concerns and also the need for funding support. There's a lot of complex issues that sit around fire safety, including trying to get the Pass 980 assessments done. There isn't the necessary trained fire engineers to do all the blocks across the country very quickly. So it's something we are raising and are asking for support for, because obviously the impact of having to spend this money this is coming out of the housing revenue account, and means we have to make difficult decisions about what this is prioritised over.
Do you have a supplementary, Tim? Oh, right. Fair enough. Okay, thanks very much. Any other Cabinet members wish to comment on this item? Helen?
Thanks, Marvin. And as a ward member with 8 of the city's blocks in my ward, I think the key to this is about reassuring tenants, isn't it? So I was really glad to see that the meetings have been set up in the community, and I'll be at both of those, for the Silcox 3 and the Bishoport 5. But I think that point, it's a valid one, and Tom and I have talked about this, and whether there is the resource within communities and with some either community businesses or for people to set up businesses. And I think it would be good to float that idea when we have the reassurance meetings. They're next week, I think, aren't they? Just so that people start thinking about it, and some of those community organisations can start planting that seed within the community. But thank you for setting up the reassurance meetings.
Thanks, Helen. Any other Cabinet members? No, can I just come, is that okay, Tom, if I just say, actually, we did, so again, come back to the point I was made with Gary, we did actually meet with community-based organisations, who, a number of them have set up CICs already, very successfully, and we raised this issue with them and the possibility of them working with residents, and we could see a number of layered benefits that come from people within the flats employed as fire marshals, Waking Watch, members of staff, who would not only work for fire but take pride, take ownership of their block as well. So, but the speed at which we've had to move, because this has been such a surprise, and again, we as Tom may say, we did this with core cities as well to try and take into account the interests of some of our fellow cities as well. It's been so quick, we have to move, incredibly quickly. So it's been, it has been something that we certainly want to do, and it also talks to the importance of our relationship, which is why we went out to meet with residents, to look over the blocks with the fire service, and it's why we obviously working with our housing officers and our community development team as well, to be on the front foot, engage with residents, making sure that they have an opportunity to share their concerns, get an understanding of how the buildings are supposed to work, what's going to be happening, changes in procedure, and obviously working with the fire service on that front as well. But Tom, let me hand back to you now for final comments and to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thank you. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you very much. So let's move on to agenda item 10. Craig, this is with you. It's Arts Council England 23 to 2026 funding.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. This is a fairly straightforward paper, really. It seeks approval to accept and spend the funding award for the period 2023 to 26 from Arts Council England in recognition of Bristol City Council's museums as a national portfolio organisation. And secondly, to spend the award as part of ACE's national portfolio as investment into museums across the South West region. The current funding for Bristol Museum Service comes to an end in March 2023, and for the Museum Development Service in March 2024. These amounts awarded in full confirms Arts Council England's faith in the service and the wider city as continuing to be at the forefront of delivery and programming of high quality arts and culture. And I'm absolutely chuffed to be bringing this to Cabinet today. I just want to thank all the officers working in the service, those in particular that worked on the bid, and all those who continue to deliver in the service through these difficult times.
Thanks very much, Craig, for that. We've had no public forum statements on this report. We've had 2 public forum questions, and the first is from Councillor Fitzjohn. Can you put your microphone on, Councillor? Thank you.
Forgive me. This is an important year for Bristol Museum. It's its 200th anniversary, and it's an amazing opportunity to do something really exciting and to reach out into the city, as is demonstrated by the text that's been written by Patsy Muller. I'm just questioning, really, whether the museum has got the kind of capacity in terms of its leadership and its vision. That's not to say it doesn't run a fantastic programme, but at the moment, that programme is very much in-house. And I'm just kind of asking, really, can we do a cultural strategy? We haven't done one since 2017. And how are we going to help the museum to reach out and really make something that's going to be very exciting? Because having read the Arts Council text, they are certainly asking the museum to punch above its weight.
Yeah, thanks, Tessa. I mean, so we've tried to protect the culture funding for the culture team for the past however many years through really difficult times. Obviously, this now is probably the worst time that we face as a council, with an unbelievable amount of a huge amount of savings required to deliver a balanced budget next year. So yes, absolutely, and I think reaching out to the city is a way to do it, rather than trying to deliver all this ourselves. We can't afford to deliver all these things ourselves, but we can certainly facilitate better outcomes, I think. So part of the remit of the most recent appointed head of culture was to deliver that transformation of the service, to try and make it more outward facing and move it away from being very service led, I suppose. That bit of work is obviously slightly stalled at the moment, but will be picked up again, and we've got recruitment of some new people coming in at the moment to drive that forward. So yes, but it is a difficult time.
May I ask you another question? Just obviously this isn't a new, nothing's particularly original, but it just feels like there is a large visual arts community out in Bristol and further afield that you can link into, and it really seems like a missed opportunity not to bring them all in under, the remit of this 200th anniversary. And this is my sector, and it would be really great to work with you on this.
So we have, I mean, I'm happy to talk to work with you on it. We can catch up after this. Obviously, we do have the One City Culture Board, which has many of those visual arts organisations on it, as well as lots of freelancers and other, much smaller organisations. And I suppose we kind of work through that to determine what the strategic direction of the city's culture sector is, rather than deciding it in the council and rolling it out in some grand way, So again, I mean, I'm happy to catch up with you on it and have a think about that. But it's probably something that we should take to that broader sort of community of the culture sector and have that conversation more widely.
Did you have a second question, Councillor? Was that your question and your supplementary? Okay. You happy with those? Well, you do have a supplementary if you wanted one.
I'm sorry. So the question is really how we can support the museum, and I feel that there are ways of getting other funding, and that it would be good to think about donors and businesses, so reaching out to those groups.
Yeah, so we do have an organisation called Bristol Museums Development Trust. So that's a range of kind of philanthropists and volunteers across the city that meets. I'm a trustee actually, and that organisation meets regularly and does provide quite a bit of investment into the museum. So if we take the reformatting of the shop recently, for example, all of that funding was provided by the Development Trust rather than by the council. So absolutely, there is a body that already exists. So yes, we can try and milk that further. We hold a series of kind of open evenings and events to try and kind of bring philanthropists into the building, and actually we hold those in the various museum buildings in an attempt to try and show them, it's not just Bristol Museum, and there's also the M Shed, there's also the Red Lodge, there's also Blaze and so on. There's a range of things that we offer, and we try and hold a range of kind of events across the city really to get people through the door to give us money.
Okay. I mean, I would just say this is an example. I think this very challenge is of where we do need to look at how we function. I think as a council, we would do well to kind of develop beyond the what you're doing about kind of relationship to, hey, I've got some ideas, I'm going to make them happen. Can I work with you to make them happen? So if we have 70 councillors all coming up with solutions and driving those solutions, such as on finance, such as on taking the challenge of the massive challenges we have to face, just keeping people warm and fed this winter and in their homes, alongside the conversation around how we make sure there's a great cultural offer at the museum, then we'll be in a better position to actually get the resource, because we are really stretched at the moment as an authority, keeping people warm, fed and in their homes, as well as trying to think about the museum. So I'd really welcome you coming forward to Craig with solutions, how we're going to get it done, you know, because we'll be a lot further down the track. We call it our make a big offer and a make a big ask approach to city leadership. And you'd be welcome to come through the door with any solutions you have. Thanks very much. Okay. Any other cabinet wish to comment on this item? No? Okay, Craig, let me hand back to you to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thank you, Marvin. In terms of the decisions we made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 18 in the reordered agenda. And Craig, so we're going to come back to you. Financial update report, December 2022.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin, and thank you for moving the agenda around to accommodate me. The finance report for period 7, 22-23 is an exception report, and as such, reports only on significant issues since November's period 6 report. Period 8 will constitute a detailed report which comes to Cabinet in January alongside the budget. At period 7, the Council is forecasting an overspend of 12.2 million, which represents 2.8% of the Council's general fund budget of 431 million. This is a small 0.1% million improvement when compared to the forecast at period 6. Adults and children's social care, education and skills, home to school transport and a delay to the forecasting of secured vacancy-free savings combine to account for new pressures of 1.6 million. Offsetting this, the conclusion of the 22-23 pay negotiations brings a 1.7 million improvement when compared to the risk previously indicated, so the assessed budget shortfall impact is 4.7 million. Cabinet is asked to approve the drawdown from reserves to cover this budget shortfall. As for period 6, the Council's general fund forecast continues to include 2.2 million of additional inflation risks. The HRA is forecasting a £2 million full-year overspend. The dedicated school grant continues in line with Q2 to forecast a 19.9 million overspend. This significant in-year deficit on the DSG would bring its carry-forward deficit at the close to 44.6 million by the end of the year. Public Health continues to report no variance to its ring-fence budget. The capital programme forecast variance at period 7 is a net 7.3 million underspend, all of which relates to the general fund. There is no forecast variance on the HRA's capital programme. Cabinet is asked to authorise the Council's Section 151 officer to accept the Adult Social Care Discharge Fund of 1.69 million. The spending plan for this will come back to Cabinet in January. Finally, Cabinet approval is requested for the emergency decision for the urgent provision of interim fire safety measures at the Council's HRA high-rise blocks, which Tom's just touched on. The realignment of the heat network budgets to meet estimated budget requirements to 31st of March 2023. And the upfront payments of 13.9 million pension deficit and future service costs, which will generate an upfront and ongoing annual savings, and was recently debated and agreed at Audit Committee. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. We've received, on the finance question, no public forum statements or questions on this report. Can I ask any Cabinet members who may wish to comment? Okay, thank you. So let me hand back to you now, Craig, to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thanks, Marvin. In terms of the decisions to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Craig, we're going to stay with you for agenda item 19, council tax base.
Yeah, thank you. So this report recommends for approval the council tax base for the next financial year. It sets out the number of properties that are forecast to pay council tax next year after taking into account those who aren't required to pay. This includes households that are exempt or receive discounts to their council tax bills under national rules, such as students and single occupiers. In addition, although seeing a general reduction in claimants, particularly those of working age, we are continuing to help over 30,000 low-income households through our council tax reduction scheme. Bristol, like many major cities, has seen collection rates fall during the pandemic with a slow recovery to date. Consequently, we need to adjust the tax base to reflect the amount of debt that won't be collected once all recovery measures have been taken. For 23-24, we are estimating a collection rate of 95%, a moderate increase on likely collection levels of 93.9 for this year. Growth in the property market and reduction in claims for council tax support results in overall growth in the tax base of 1.36%. However, this is slightly lower than anticipated in the MTFP, resulting in an additional pressure of 1.3 million.
Again, we've had no public forum statements or question on this report. Any other cabinet members? Okay, so let's bring this through. Craig, I'll hang it back to you to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thank you, Marv. It's probably worth saying this one and the next one actually will come through to full council for debate and discussion at its next meeting, I believe. In terms of decisions being made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thanks, Craig. So on to agenda item 20, Collection Fund Surplus Deficit Report, and this is with you as well.
Yeah, thanks. Apologies, everyone. Although the effects of the pandemic continue to impact on both our citizens and businesses, there are positive signs for the local economy, with a significant reduction in claims for council tax support and some moderate growth in business rate income. Remains to be seen how long that lasts. Despite economic forecasts suggesting otherwise, in Bristol, claims to our council tax reduction scheme have fallen significantly, particularly amongst working age claimants. This has resulted in a 4.7 million saving on the budget this year. However, council tax arrears remain high, and so it is necessary to set aside additional provision to cover the possibility of being unable to collect some of those arrears, particularly the older debt. Many businesses have continued to receive support from government in business rate relief. To date, the council has received 12.9 million in government grant. The majority of this has been used to offset accounts in debit, significantly reducing in-year and prior year arrears and reducing the provision required to cover business rate debt. Appeals against business rate valuations also appear to be levelling off following a significant spike during 21-22. This means any top-up to the appeals provision will be significantly less than last year. The savings in council tax support, along with the reduction in outstanding business rate debt, are the primary reasons for the surplus on the collection fund for 22-23, the council share of which is 1.7 million for council tax and 3.1 million for business rates.
Thanks, Craig. So we've had no public forum statements or questions on this report. Any cabinet members? No? Okay. Craig, let me hand back to you to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thank you. In terms of the decisions to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report, and now I need to leave. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Craig. Have a good evening. All right. Okay, so let's move on to agenda item 11 as we go back to the original running order. So this is procurement of household goods and goods contract in respect of the Refugee Settlement Scheme. Helen, this is with you.
Thanks very much, Marvin. And as you say, this is the reprocurement of household goods for resettled families who come to Bristol. We haven't had any public comment on it. It is an important report because it continues to state our commitment to our status as a city of sanctuary, and it's something that we perform very, very well. It is completely funded, this scheme, by the Home Office. And I don't know if people have read the appendices, but there's one that refers to the pure joy when children who have been through traumatic experiences go into a house that we've been able to get for them and have where the bedrooms have been appropriately decorated with everything that they could want in there. So it's up to £5,000 for each home. It is important to add to this that, of course, not all of the schemes that the government requires us to participate in are funded in this way, and we continue to make representations to government about that, because actually we want people to be here and to be settled and to be able to integrate into our city, and having kind of different classes of people in the city does not help. But this is a very positive report, and I think it also acknowledges. We talked earlier about the fantastic work that our officers have done over City Leap, but I think that Anne James and that resettlement team, when you think of all that's been thrown at them over the last few years, things that they weren't expecting to do, the Afghan scheme, obviously the Homes for Ukraine. So when I first took responsibility for this, it was all about the Syrian resettlement scheme, and now it's so much wider. But we should be very proud of what we do in Bristol.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much, Helen. We've had no public forum statements on this item. How many cabinet members like to speak? Don and then Asher.
Thanks, Marvin. Yes, like most councillors, I guess we've had opportunities to support people coming to this country through no fault of their own and through just the course of their lives, really. And in fact, I was writing to a Ukrainian gentleman in my ward this morning who was just asking what was going on, really, what sources of help there were. And you've mentioned Anne James now, so I won't get in trouble for saying a name. But must pay tribute to Anne James and the team. As Helen says, it's been relentless for years, and it's a great privilege, and I think it's a great beacon actually that our city is able to respond and continue to respond in this way, despite all the other crises we face. We've never let up on our hospitality towards people in more challenging circumstances than ourselves, and thanks Anne, and thanks to the team.
Thank you, Asher.
Yeah, whether you're allowed to say it or not, I am going to big up Anne and her team, because I have seen that team evolve over the last 4 or 5 years, and I remember when it was just Anne and maybe the amount of people on one hand, and the way in which we have been able to adapt to all of the different crises that have been going on, and the team has just like moved seamlessly. Ukrainians, Syrians, unaccompanied minors, you name it, the team is absolutely brilliant, and I'm really proud of the fact that we've been part of an ongoing project, Inclusive Cities, looking at models of good practice for migrant and refugee communities with other cities across the UK. And I've also, and I have to say, even in Europe, we are lauded by many of our colleagues about the way in which we actually really care. It's about even caring about the people who are coming here. So it's not just about Anne and her team go beyond just delivering a service. They actually care. And the fact that she's gone so far, I mean, she's even learning the language and has been able to communicate with many of the Syrian refugees that are here. So, yeah, props to them all day, every day. Great team. Great piece of work.
Everyone wants in. Ellie.
Sorry, I need to come in as well. Anne James was a force and her team is amazing. But I just wanted to make the point about it's those extra things that they've done to make people feel welcome, whether that's, coming to meet our football teams and going to watch a game, or having a hand-stitched quilt made by an organisation that Anne's linked with, or, getting to know our libraries and learning how we provide different books in different languages so that they can access them. But there's also the choice that's given with the household goods as well. People can choose what they want in their houses, and that's the difference between a house and a home, is that there's that choice that allows them to take ownership of this space and feel welcome, and that this is their space in their city now as well. So there's something about that as well that just has really gone into thinking about what does welcome a person in and make them feel like this city can be a home to them.
Thank you. I'll chuck a couple of comments in there again, but you've gone through the sequence, haven't we? Since we've come in, there's been, and I'm sure I miss out, we've had Afghans, unaccompanied children. I was able to phone up Anne when it was on Andrew Marr in the morning, or said, how many children have we taken? We got a number. I said, well, we support taking more. We were able to do something direct there. Syrians, Hong Kong, Ukrainians. And just thinking about the evenings we've had in the hall just behind us, in which we have, as you said earlier, it's also those things that make sure people feel welcome. We've just had people in the hall and we've just said, welcome, you're part of Bristol. The last Ukrainian gathering, there were tears in the room as people made welcome. And I would say, again, just last week I was at an event and I was talking to a Ukrainian man. He's actually part of he's been part of the forces out there, but he was in London. And when we talked about what was going on in Bristol, he just was given a heartfelt, emotional thank you for Bristol's role in being a place that's welcomed. I thank Anne and team, but I think it was also worth it thinking about our city partners as well. When you think about Ashley Community Housing, the faith organisations that have stepped up across the city, David Barclay and Good Faith Partnership as well, or people who have really come together to help connect. And our community development team, people like Mohammed Al Sharif, gets a mention in every other cabinet now for all he does. Yeah, Bristol Refugee Rights, all those groups who have come together to make sure that our approach is both compassionate and intelligent, and to maximise the resource we make available. And it's worth thinking about the context in which we've done this as a city as well. We do it in the context of austerity and a crisis of funding for local government. We do it in the face of a hostile environment created by our national government around migrants and refugees. And we do it in a world in which both political instability and climate change are increasing the numbers of people moving in the face of growing world population as well. So we do it in a context that's not easy. So it's a real source of pride that our team have been able to really lead and deliver on this. And thanks for your leadership in this as well, Helen. So let me hand back to you now to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thanks, Marvin. And as we're doing the round of thanks, I think we also ought to specifically make a mention of the schools that have stepped up to take on refugee and asylum-seeking children. And we do, again, a fantastic job there, making sure that the children have got uniforms so that they don't look different from the rest of the children in the schools. And that, again, is a very important part of what we do. So in terms of the decision to be taken today, I approve the recommendation as set out in the report.
Thanks, Helen. So on to agenda item 12, which is application for grant from the Brownfield Land Release Fund to facilitate the development at Redcliffe Wharf. And I'm going to bring this item. So the paper accepts £516,000 for enabling a development project on an empty brownfield site at Redcliffe Wharf, which Bristol City Council have been attempting to build out since 2012. So this clearly constrained site has historic infrastructure, which has caused frustrating delays to the project coming forward, as well as limited affordability. So with the endorsement of the Corporate Leadership Board, we bid to the Brownfield Land Release Fund, a cross-government initiative between the Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities and One Public Estate, which is delivered in partnership by the Local Government Association and the Cabinet Office. So we were awarded £500,000. So Cabinet agreeing to accept this funding will allow us to unlock this stalled site and deliver 45 homes, 6,000 square metres of office and ground floor commercial retail and leisure use, 12 new moorings and a ferry stop and much needed improvements to the public realm. As we've discussed lots of times here before, Brownfield is the priority for Bristol. It is key that we are building densely in central areas to reduce car dependency, to reduce sprawl, and to bring footfall to central businesses, local businesses. And this is also a prominent site beside a key route from Temple Meads and part of the harbour side, which is underused now. So this will complement the other investments in the area with our restoration of Redcliffe Bascule Bridge, the repair and opening of O&M sheds, and Goreham's emerging plans for the Port Wall car park site. So I'm really pleased to bring this paper to Cabinet colleagues today. We've received one public forum statement on this report, and this is from Gordon Richardson and Dave Redgewell, representing Bristol Disability Equality Forum. I don't see Dave, so I wonder if I see Gordon. No? Okay. Well, I'm sure Dave is watching on YouTube, as I think he always does. So, Dave, we'll take your statement and get back to you on that. We've had no other public forum questions on this report. Do any Cabinet members have a comment on this? No? Okay. Thank you very much. So, in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Agenda item 13, moving traffic enforcement. Now I'm going to ask Councillor Don Alexander to introduce this report. Don.
Thanks, Marvin. We have long campaigned to deal with moving traffic enforcement, banned left turns, etc. Being able to enforce moving traffic contraventions across the city will add to road safety measures already being taken to make sure Bristol's roads are safer for its citizens and drivers. The report sets out the 6 first locations we have consulted on. These have been selected based on evidence and feedback from councillors and partners. We'll look at how we make the most of these powers in other locations, balanced with the resources. Mobile cameras might be an option in future, but these 6 locations are a great start as they're known problem areas. Moving traffic enforcement gives us direct control to ensure those who break the law are penalised, and I very much welcome this application, which is going to the DFT. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Don. We've again received 1 public forum statement, but we've received 5 public forum questions on this item. Statements from Dave, and again, Dave, we'll come back to you on that. On to the 5 public forum questions. The first 2 questions are from a Rob Breyer. No, I think we've had it over the internet, but obviously not in person. So we'll have to write back to Rob on that one. The next question is from Councillor Bales.
I'm delighted that the council is moving forward quickly to install a head-only enforcement camera on Hareclive Road and Anton Bantock Way junction. This will undoubtedly deter drivers from reckless, illegal driving and help prevent another fatal injury at the junction. Please could the Cabinet Member for Transport inform me of when he expects the Department for Transport to approve this scheme?
Thanks, Kerry. We hope next summer. I know that sounds an awfully long time, but the DFT doesn't move quickly, generally speaking. Mustn't be rude here, I suppose, about them. But just to say thank you for your, I don't often say this, very effective lobbying on behalf of your residents, especially given the tragedy which occurred there. I think that's a tribute to the quality of local councillor that you are.
Any supplementary questions?
Thanks, Don. Let me get my question up. I'm pleased with how quickly the council is moving forward with this process. I think you've already just answered this one. Hang on. Don, do you have a view on how we could reform the process so we could do more schemes like this in less time?
Yes. I very much wish that traffic regulation orders didn't take so long. It was interesting to see how the government during the coronavirus pandemic managed to loosen up the regulations to allow TTROs to happen more quickly. As soon as that crisis was over, they then reverted to the anachronistic form of the law, whereby we have to jump through many hoops, put statutory notices in the Bristol Post at great cost, and other things which make all of our traffic schemes more difficult and more expensive. And you know, it's just one of the areas where the relationship with central government and local government is very wrong. And I look forward to reading the report that Gordon Brown and the Commission have produced, which I believe Marvin has contributed to, which will lay out a new plan for the respect with which local government is treated in the United Kingdom from 2024 when we have a new government. Thank you.
Thanks, Kerry, and thanks very much, Don, for your response to that, and we can follow up outside of this. The next 2 questions are from Councillor Wilcox. David?
That doesn't look like my question up there, but still. Yes, I welcome the Council's ability to enforce moving traffic regulations, and I'm interested in what process there is for communities to nominate junctions for enforcement, please.
Thanks, David. I have a list already from eager councillors and community groups, etc. I'm happy to hear from other councillors and add to that list, and there will be future tranches submitted to the DFT. So if you have particular sites where you feel this would help. We'll put that together with our own data and make up a number of priorities as we have done. This is just the first tranche.
Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, that's good to hear. Thank you. I'm interested in whether you're working with the bus companies to locate other sites as well.
I don't know at the moment, but I am sure we will and can. And as I say, we already have a number of sites planned, but I will go back to the bus companies, and I dare say that we have actually, but I couldn't honestly put my hand on my heart and quote examples.
Okay, thanks very much. I think you had another question, is that right?
I did indeed, thank you.
Yeah, okay, please launch in.
So there's a modal filter in our ward where motorbikes and other delivery riders are actually using to break through. So would it be possible to set up a moving traffic enforcement on that particular site, please?
I'd love to, but it's in South Gloucestershire. So I think it'd be worth you learning a little bit more about the boundaries of your ward.
Half the site is in Bristol, half the site is in South Gloss. I'm perfectly aware of where my ward boundaries are.
Not according to my map. I was looking earlier today.
Okay.
I'll come back to you on that one, Don.
Thanks very much. Okay. So I think that's it from public forum for that item. Any cabinet members wish to comment on this? It's kind of understated, but actually quite significant, isn't it? Movement of enforcement powers for us. It's been a running sore in some areas where people sometimes have not really understood the limitations of our powers and where they are. So this would be, could be a good move for us. But let me hand back to you now, Don, to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Okay, so on to agenda item 14, improving drug and alcohol treatment outcomes for people with housing need. Ellie, you're bringing this item.
Thank you. We regularly talk of Bristol's high concentration of need related to drug and alcohol use, and I am proud of our public health approach to this need. Yesterday, we were visited by Dame Carol Black, who authored the 2021 National Strategy for this public health paper comes to Cabinet to grant approval to accept and spend grant funding of 1.2 million, half for 23-24 and half for 24-25, to increase the amount of people we support recovering from drug and alcohol dependency into stable and secure housing. This approach aligns with our One City goal by implementing the Bristol Drug Alcohol Strategy by 2027 to ensure people live healthy lives safe from the harms of alcohol and other drugs, and it also supports a shared vision for homes and communities that by 2050 we want everyone in Bristol to live in a home that meets their needs within a thriving and safe community. As per Bristol City Council's Homelessness and Rough Sleeping Strategy 2019 to 2024, we are focusing maximum efforts to reduce rough sleeping. We have consulted with service users, multidisciplinary and partner organisations, practitioners and BCC commissioners to shape how the funds could best support the target group. We will be growing the evidence base on the housing-related needs of people in treatment to help demonstrate the efficacy of this approach. We cannot turn the tide on the tragedies that are associated with drug use unless we champion approaches like this, move away from the narrative of stigma and enforcement, and instead focus on the human beings at the heart of the issues and purposefully choosing to support them holistically. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. And again, this is one of those areas, this is the hard yards of a city, isn't it, with so many people out there in positions of high vulnerability that we have to support. And the consequences of not supporting these people can turn up in great social injustices, social instability, but also great expense to the National Health Service, and other services, criminal justice not least. And you get that merry-go-round of addictions, mental health, criminal justice. So it's a pity that we haven't had more on it. Can I have any cabinet members who wish to comment on this item? See if we've gone. I think Ash would have gone on this, but she's not in the room at the moment. We can't hold up. But let me hand back to you, Ellie, to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thank you. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you very much. So on to agenda item 15, agenda for change, pay uplifts for the Bristol City Council funded services within the Community Children's Health Partnership, and this is with you as well.
Thank you. This paper seeks approval to authorise the Directors of Public Health, Children, Families and Safer Communities and Education and Skills to meet the costs of current and future staff pay awards for BCC Commission services within the Community Children's Health Partnership contract. CCHP is delivered by Serona Care and Health and runs until 2027. It covers a range of community health services for children, some of which are funded by BCC, totalling £11.27 million per year. This authorisation will allow us to meet the costs of current and future pay awards from the public health grants for the public health services and Children or Education General Fund or an alternative source for the non-public health services, provided that there continues to be sufficient funding available from these sources. On that point, I think it's important to say that although pay awards are undoubtedly a good thing and demonstrate that we value our nurses and our workforce, when these decisions are made centrally, we need to see our public health funding supported in turn so that we can deliver these uplifts without compromising the delivery of our other essential services. The CCHP contract is a critical component of our children and young people's service offer. It delivers essential functions focused on early intervention and prevention, for example, in relation to children and young people's mental health and SEND. The largest service is public health nursing, a well-performing statutory and universal service. The contract offers good value for money because of longer-term cost avoidance of problems escalating. Thank you.
Thank you. We've had no public forum statements on this report. Before I come in, is any other cabinet member like to comment on this? Asha?
I was just going to say everything that Ellie said and then some, because I think this is the issue that we have. The money doesn't follow the need, but we recognise that we have to pay what we need to pay. So this money is required to provide that uplift to the many staff who provide services for our children and young people. So yeah, it is what it is.
And similarly, on a theme of this, Ellie, actually, last week, 2 weeks ago, I was on a panel with Andy Haldane, who's the chief exec of the RSA, formerly chief economist in the Bank of England. And we were talking about the need to invest in our human infrastructure, as it were, and to reclassify what has historically been seen as spending as investment, right? This is about investing in mental health. There is a financial return to this, as well as a social justice return over the medium to long term. The problem is that the national government is on a one-year cycle. It thinks about spending. It doesn't think about how you invest in the health resilience of your populations, and actually taking care of your workforce, making sure your workforce are not just seen as a drain on resource, but as a critical component of that investment journey is part of the reframing that's needed around the way we think about national finances. But I appreciate your leadership on this and that of your team. Let me hand back to you now to take the decision, which I support, and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thank you. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thanks, Ellie. So on to agenda item 16 now. This is with me, Economy of Place, implementation of the corporate strategy. Since 2017, we have had an agreed corporate strategy that has committed us to making the council a more streamlined organisation, simplifying and reducing scopes of work and safeguarding our core statutory functions and becoming a development organisation. Since 2016, when the combined authority was created by government order, the powers of strategic transport passed to them as the lead organisation. And we've discussed the transfer of those powers since that time, but unfortunately things were delayed by a number of challenges, including COVID. But we're now in advanced discussions with the combined authority to pass those powers over in full. We have been in a hybrid situation of Bristol leading the work programmes on strategic transport within our boundaries and then having to request funding from the combined authority. The work should sit with the powers and funding at the combined authority while Bristol retains full decision-making powers on actions inside our own boundaries. Consultation with staff and unions and discussion with the combined authority will continue. The decision for Bristol to cease the work it doesn't have the powers for is an obvious and simple one, and we will continue to work through the processes to ensure the West of England Combined Authority carries out its statutory duties. Bristol City Council will, of course, retain the powers of the Highways Authority. Some workers will transfer to the Highways Authority and will continue our key roles of upgrading our bridges and infrastructure and maintaining the highways. Disbanding the City Design Service is good practice in line with the corporate strategy commitment to make the council more focused. The current system creates an internal market that isn't efficient, and changing to direct management of the function in each department allows for more direct management of the skills and expertise these designers and engineers bring. So there is a review of the full functions of the department, and some work will transfer to areas including regeneration and planning to continue the necessary service. At the same time, we are reviewing the planning function, including the introduction of a chief planner. This review will also include consultation with staff and unions, but its outcome will increase productivity and ensure resources allocated to key priorities. So we've had 19 public forum statements on this report. The first statement is from Matthew Coburn. We get the microphone to Matthew.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to give you heads up at 50 seconds, okay?
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Matthew Coburn, and I have 20 years' experience working in transport in Bristol. I'm a Unison steward representing the dozens of colleagues affected by these proposals, many of whom are here this evening. These proposals make no sense at all. Firstly, city transport brings in huge sums of money to the city. The report does not accurately reflect the large sums of money secured and managed by this team. Secondly, transport is very complex, and there is a huge amount of expertise in the team covering many disciplines. The report glosses over this by suggesting some functions can simply be moved to WECA without going into the complexities of this and the impact it would have on project delivery. Thirdly, the team delivers many services to some of the most vulnerable people in our city, such as cycling skills for people with disabilities and crossing patrols, including in the most deprived areas of the city. The report simply refers to concentrating on statutory functions
10 seconds.
Without considering the impact this could have on our most deprived communities. For these reasons, I would urge you to vote against this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. So, next statement is from Tom Merchant. Okay, Tom, I'll give you an indication at 50 seconds, okay?
Thank you very much, Mayor. These people have come. There's 270 people identified in the economy of place restructure, and about a fifth of them have come tonight. I mean, a lot of them, some of them have gone since because we're right at the end of the agenda. I'd just like to say these are the people who deliver your plans. They're the people who deliver the strategy of the city. And you talk about investing in people. Well, these are the people you should be investing in. They managers all across the city have done really deep dives, yet these guys don't know what's going to happen to them. And this is again another failure in telling the guys what's going to happen. You know, we should be giving people a heads up about, you know, what's going to happen to people and whether or not they're going to transfer and who to. So I'd just like to say, please.
Okay,
please
10 seconds.
Please think again. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. So, next statement is from Martin Hooper. Okay. Linda Bailey. Sharice McAllister. Emma Hallett. Dave Redgwar, we know, isn't here. John Payne, Andrew Lynch, Alderman Vari Threffel,
I'm here with my son. Thank you, Marvin. So the salient points are in my statement, but really I want to draw your attention to what are the very serious financial, legal, reputational and political risks associated with this paper being brought forward today. And I really would like you to consider pausing it. You mentioned obviously the importance of us working with WECA and driving things forward. WECA is going to change again when we've got local elections coming up in Baines and South Gloucestershire in May coming up. So my ask is really to suspend this, do some more research, do some more thinking through of the proposals, and think about the context that we're working in. We're also in 14 months going to have a committee system come in place in Bristol, and that is going to change substantively how we operate as a council yet again, and I feel like that is not being considered within these proposals. The last thing really I kind of wanted to raise is around leadership and accountability. So Marvin,
10 seconds.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously you've been part of the consultation around the New Britain publication that came out yesterday, and a quote from that is, "The common desire for more local control should be a legal requirement to require decisions to be taken as close and meaningfully and practically possible to the people affected by them, so putting the power and opportunity closer to each citizen." This proposal does not do that. It does not deliver Labour's vision in 2 years. Okay. It did not deliver Labour's vision today. So my recommendation is please consider turning this down and do more research and think around it.
Thanks, Roy. Alan Morris. Nick Sargent. Councillor Fitzjohn.
Okay. I don't agree with this proposed solution. To close two important teams, city design and strategic transport, will be a huge loss in a very essential area. These teams perform important roles bidding for national government funding to improve transport infrastructure, designing council-led schemes and supporting development control to assess planning applications consistent with the aims and needs of our city, advising that a planning application should be refused or altered if we have to add to congestion or road danger. Cutting these teams is not a sustainable way of making budget savings. My experience as a ward councillor is that the council is already stuck in a loop, reactive rather than proactive on planning and transport measures. I fear this will cost the council more in long run. One more, please reconsider this proposal.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edward Plowden.
That's me. So it's vital we have expertise to shape our future city, to decarbonise with buildings and transport the most stubborn areas to reduce carbon. The two current teams provide invaluable expertise to members and play a vital role in shaping our city, and they generate inward investment and income within their own services and other services. Incredibly, the report notes that outsourcing these teams could increase costs. We need private consultancies to be on tap, but not on top, especially if you believe in a publicly owned bus service. It's right to explore the potential benefits of service restructuring and the role of WECA, but it's currently not clear what the proposals are, how they'll be consulted on, in what timescale, and how that runs up against the WECA audit report that identifies serious weaknesses in its functioning and recommends that unitary authorities work closely with WECA in making decisions. We need the capacity to do that. We need a clear set of principles, options and risks to be debated in public. If the Cabinet cares about the future of Bristol, we need a smooth handover of power to the committee system and a clear understanding of the role of WECA compared with the councils. Not to do this will be detrimental to the long-term future of our city and our neighbours.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. And I'm coming last in this list, so a lot of good points have actually been made. But I'd also like to make the point that the two teams involved are actually profit centres, not cost centres, and they actually make money for the council, and we shouldn't be actually trying to get rid of them because they're very important functions that the committee system run council will actually need to deliver its climate change targets. And if we get rid of them, we won't be able to meet them as effectively. And that ends my statement.
Thanks very much. So turning to the questions, we have 6 public forum questions. The first 2 are from Richard Goldthorpe. Okay. The next question is from Dave Redgewell, who's obviously not with us. The next 2 questions are from Councillor Plowden.
So what comparative analysis has been done as to how transport and urban design is strategically planned in other similar councils, and crucially include those which are part of a combined authority but which is not yet an integrated transport authority?
So as part of the ongoing work on delivery of transport objectives and strategic planning, there have been various different delivery models have been put forward for consideration, including looking at other combined authorities and working with other core cities. And the appropriate balance of planning and delivery regionally and locally has also been considered. So discussions are ongoing with WECA about the most efficient and effective split of those responsibilities. And there is a management process that will be gone through looking at all the pros and cons as well. Do you have your supplementary?
So it sounds like there's been a lot of work being done. Is that going to be shared with scrutiny or other councillors, particularly the committee working on the future governance system? Because I'm afraid that this is going to hamper that future committee working system.
Yeah, an outline will be given during the process. That will be, a part of the process. But the management team have to work up the proposals in the first instance. But as soon as an outline is ready to go, it will be shared. Did you have your second question?
Yes, thanks.
Or another supplementary?
Thank you, Mayor Rees. What work has been done to review the capital recharge rate for transport, particularly highways and urban design staff, to ensure it is maximised and continues to be legitimate?
So the internal capital recharge approach and the rate across the council is regularly reviewed to ensure it's maximised and that it continues to be legitimate.
When we last looked at, you've done a great job in reducing back office costs, and that's a lot of the capital recharge is about back office costs. The other element in there is making sure that you have a strategy team, which was agreed with the DFT a few years ago. So I'm afraid that we're going into a downward spiral because we'll reduce our capital recharge and actually lose the ability to pay for our strategy team, and that seems short-sighted. Don't you agree?
Well, I'll take that. No. It was a statement followed by a question asking if I agreed, and the answer is no. And, our challenge is to make sure that, as I said at the beginning, in line with our corporate strategy, we're an organisation that is prioritising and to making sure that decisions are being made where the powers are and where the resources are, but to make sure that we as a city remain in the driving seat. And the nature of relationships at the moment have not necessarily served the city as well as we would have liked. So, no, I don't agree with your conclusion, but there's more work to be done, and I'd be happy to share that work with you. Okay, so I don't think we have any more questions. Anything from Cabinet members on this item? No? Okay. Well, in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report. And there's more to come. On to agenda item 17, independent and non-maintained special school placements block contract. Asha?
Thanks, Mayor. The report seeks to approve the running of a competitive tender and subsequent award of a block contract for 30 placements in an independent special school here in Bristol for the next 5 years. These placements will be for children and who present with a range of complex additional learning needs identified by their education, health and care plans. Plans which set out the additional support and identifies the education provision required to meet those needs to secure the best possible outcomes for the young person across education, health and social care as they get older and prepare them for adulthood. The majority of children in our city with special educational needs do have their needs met within local mainstream early years settings, schools or colleges. However, there are some children with an EHCP that mandates that their needs are best met in a specialist setting. And most of these children and young people's needs can be met in maintained special schools or special academies. Where a child or a young person's needs are particularly complex, their needs may be better met in an independent or non-maintained special school, which offers highly specialised, bespoke packages of support with potential for therapeutic interventions to be built into the setting. Once special educational provision has been specified in an EHC plan, the local authority has a legal duty to provide it. I just want to give you some stats. As of August of 2022, we had over 1,200 children and young people who were educated in a specialist setting, and that's an increase of 35% since 2018. We also have 192 children who are educated in an independent or non-maintained school, a further increase of 46% since 2018. So as the number of EHCPs continue to rise, so of course will the demand for special school placements. What we're presenting to you today is very much needed. So in terms of financials, the council has set a maximum annual placement cost of £70,000 per child. This has been benchmarked against similar placements and really offers good value for money. So the total year contract will be $2,100,000, and over the 5 years of the contract, it will be worth $10.5 million. And so we present the report before you for approval.
Thank you very much, Asha. So we've received no public forum statements on this item, but I'm pleased to say we do have at least one question, and that's from Councillor Tim Rippington. So thank you for your question, Tim.
Thank you, Marvin. Yeah, I'm very pleased to see the council's making positive moves to secure 30 places for children who present with a range of complex additional learning needs. Provision for such children has always been lagging behind demand in our city, so it's right that we look ahead and ensure we can allocate as many places as possible to these children in future years. Can the Cabinet member just reassure me regarding the quality of these independent placements and how we are able to monitor to ensure they deliver the standard of education that these children deserve? Thanks.
Sorry, Councillor Riffington. These placements will be bound by the terms of our contract for independent special schools, which contains a robust monitoring schedule. Individual placements will be monitored by the local authority through the local authority annual review processes. Checking outcomes are being worked to and provision is being delivered as set out in each child or young person's EHCP plan. Interventions and progress should be clearly linked to the outcomes identified in the plan. The provider will provide reports and updates concerning any individual child or person as reasonably requested by us, the Council, and quarterly contract management meetings will take place with the provider to ensure KPIs and quality standards are being met. Monitoring reports will focus on learner outcomes, safeguarding, pupil feedback and staffing.
Thanks. Do you have a supplementary, Tim?
Okay, thank you. Just wondering, do we know if securing these places will mean we can meet our entire need for specialist education, or is there going to be still more required?
We will need more. The need is demanding. It's not even year on year, it's daily. So we are seeing demand for specialist placements kind of going through the roof, and that's why we're investing more money and hopefully working alongside our neighbouring local authorities to kind of deliver more specialist provision closer to home. So this is just one of many solutions that we have in delivering for children with special educational needs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Any Cabinet members like to comment on this item? Okay. So let me hand back to you now, Asha, to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thank you. So in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you very much, Asha. So that's the end of today's Cabinet meeting. I want to thank everyone for attending and for those that stayed for the whole duration. It is a comment I make often. We cover a breadth of issues in full council. I do know there are the headline issues that become the flavour of a month at any particular point in time. I noticed the BBC here about the fire. I hope they do something on City Leap, since it's one of a world first, but we'll see. But we've done SEN, we've done homelessness, housing provision, refugees, we've done public health, early intervention in drugs. These are the hard yards of running a city, taking care of the population as best we can. And it's always uplifting when people enter into the fullness of the discussions about what makes a city tick and how we make this a city that is as fair and inclusive as possible. So I appreciate staying for the whole journey. Next Cabinet meeting is on the 24th of January 2023. Have a good Christmas and New Year, and see you then. Take care.